In a world where children should feel safe and loved by their parents, something terrible happened. On June 15th, 2023, the lives of 3 young boys, 4-year-old Hunter, 7-year-old Clayton, and 3-year-old Chase, were tragically cut short. The culprit behind this heartbreaking incident was their 32-year-old father, Chad Doerman, who shocked the nation with his involvement in his own children's deaths. From the brutal act of taking their children's lives to later sitting calmly on the porch, each moment unfolds a chilling narrative of horror. In the quiet town of Monroe, Ohio, a father's love turned into a twisted act of violence on June 15, 2023. 3 young boys were senselessly killed and left their mother and community in a state of shock and disbelief. Chad Doerman, the father, was charged with this horrific crime. Initially, he confessed to his actions, but later he pleaded not guilty, adding to the mystery surrounding his motive and involvement. As the investigation proceeded, disturbing details about the incident emerged, painting a chilling picture of a father's descent into unthinkable cruelty. As the legal proceedings continued, the world watches anxiously, hoping for justice for the innocent lives lost and searching for answers to the haunting question: what could drive a father to commit such a horrific crime against his own children? Chad Christopher Doerman, a 32-year-old from Claremont County, Ohio, was married to 34-year-old Laura. They have a teenage stepdaughter named Alexis, who was 16 years old. Chad and Laura also had 3 young sons together, aged 3, 4, and 7, named Hunter, Clayton, and Chase, who always stayed together and loved sports. They were funny and sweet boys. Laura, their mom, stayed at home while Chad worked to support the family. They lived in a simple 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom house in New Richmond, a small town of about 2,800 people along the Ohio River in Claremont County. They were an ordinary family until tragedy struck. So on June 15th, 2023, Chad came home from work a bit earlier than usual. He then decided to take a nap with his family, so he invited his wife Laura and their 3 sons to join him in their bedroom. They all sat together and were having a good time, laughing and chatting. But little did Laura know that those moments of happiness would soon turn into unimaginable horror. After a few minutes of chatting and laughing, Chad got up and opened the gun safe, which was right next to their bed. He took the Marlin Model HC-22 rifle, loaded the magazine, and shot his 4-year-old son Hunter twice. His daughter Alexis was watching television in the family room when she heard the sound of a gunshot. She hurried to the primary bedroom to see what had happened. As she reached the doorway, she witnessed the horrifying sight of her brother being shot. Alexis was terrified. She turned and ran as fast as she could. Laura, who was with her kids, ran to provide aid to her child Hunter. She then shouted at the other kids to run and save their lives. Alexis noticed the oldest boy running out the wrong door toward a field. She shouted for him to keep running. Chad was following him, and within moments, he shot his 7-year-old son Clayton. After Clayton fell to the ground and was bleeding badly, Chad stood next to him, as if he had achieved his goals. Alexis was witnessing all of that. She was horrified, and then she ran to the house, grabbed her youngest brother, and fled to safety, desperate to protect their lives. Chad ran towards Alexis and caught her and raised his gun and asked her to put the 3-year-old Chase down. Alexis cried and pleaded with Chad not to shoot her and also begged him to stop. Chad tried to shoot her in the head, but luckily he ran out of bullets. At that moment, Alexis ran to the fire station where she urgently stopped a woman who was passing by her house. She told the woman that her stepfather killed all her family. The woman then called 911 at 4:15 p.m.
The girl running down the street saying that her stepfather is killing everyone in her family.
And what did the female say to you?
And she says that her stepfather is killing everybody in her house. I did. I'm on the phone with them right now.
Did she say how or what was happening?
I asked her to get in the car with me, and she said she couldn't leave her family.
Can you tell how many people have been shot?
I think 2 children.
Okay.
Meanwhile, 3-year-old Chase returned to his mother. Suddenly, Chad and Laura started arguing over Chase. Chad tried to pull Chase out of Laura's arms, but she was holding onto him tightly, trying to protect him. Shockingly, Chad then bit Laura and then pressed the gun against her thumb and fired. Laura dropped Chase because she was wounded badly. Chad then shot Chase in the head and later arranged the lifeless bodies of all 3 children in a line. After killing all 3 of them, he sat calmly on his front porch, acting like nothing happened. While Laura was inside the house, she was continuously shouting for help. After the 911 call, the police arrived at the scene at 4:25 p.m.
Stand up! Stand up now! caliber 21. It's in there.
When police arrived, Chad was sitting on the porch of his house with a rifle beside him. The police officers quickly caught him and placed him in handcuffs. Chad appeared calm and did not resist being restrained. While one officer controlled him, the other attended to the 3 victims. Paramedics tried to save the children, but unfortunately they all died from their gunshot injuries. Later, Laura was taken to the University of Cincinnati Medical Center for her injuries. Chad Doerman's stepdaughter Alexis was lucky to have survived the shooting. She had managed to escape from the house. On the same day that he killed his 3 sons, June 15, 2023, Chad was arrested at 4:27 p.m.
What are you doing, man?
Hey, are you copying all this?
Yeah, roll over. I ain't gonna hurt you. I ain't gonna hurt nobody. You got anything on you? No, I ain't got nothing, man. Phone, that's it. I ain't mad. I ain't nothing. Just make sure that dog don't come out. I don't think he'll bite you. Just don't reach for him and try to grab him and pet him. All right. He won't bite you.
What's going on, man?
Nothing. Can I stand up? It's kind of uncomfortable.
I'm gonna get you here in a
I ain't
second.
running away. You can do whatever you want.
When the police officers caught him, he was surprisingly calm and polite, behaving as though nothing had happened. Later, he was taken to jail for more questioning and investigation.
Just kind of face that window on your right there for a minute. Just face.
What's your name? Chad. Have you ever been here before?
I think one time for fight with Dad.
During the interrogation, Chad Doerman admitted to police that he had been planning the killings since October 2022. Chad also confessed to the investigators that he hadn't slept for 3 to 4 days because the thought of killing his own sons was unbearable. These revelations painted a disturbing picture of his state of mind leading up to the tragic events. The investigation continued, and investigators explored whether Chad had a history of general violence. They also checked his phone records. Upon reviewing the records, it was also found that he mainly had traffic violations in Claremont County, with the exception of one incident when he was 18 involving criminal damage. Additionally, there was a domestic violence case in 2010, where he was accused of choking his father, Keith Doerman. Later, the case was dropped when Keith Doerman failed to appear in court to testify for the prosecution. These records provided insight into Chad's legal history and past interactions with law enforcement in the county. As the investigation was going on, one of the neighbors, Richard Kincannon, told a news channel he was angry every day. There wasn't a day he didn't yell at his wife and kids out there.
He was very angry. Every day yelling at his wife, dogging her, downgrading the kids, just very angry. And if they didn't do what he said, and I've seen it firsthand, but I never thought that he would do that.
The woman who called 911 also gave an interview to the news channel and said,
"She was running with a little black lab and she was screaming, 'Call 911, call 911. She says, my stepfather is shooting everyone in my household."
Investigators also examined whether there were any signs of financial difficulties. They found out from the county auditor's website that Doerman purchased his converted manufactured home on 3 acres in 2016 for $75,000. According to the records, he paid property taxes up to 2023, indicating there were no obvious issues with mortgage payments. Detectives also interviewed 59-year-old Keith Doerman, Chad's father. He was in utter shock to hear what his child did. He told the investigators, "I'm still trying to comprehend." Keith Doerman said that he couldn't believe his child had done something so horrible. He even said, "There was something going on in his life that he couldn't handle anymore. I can't talk to him. They aren't letting me talk to him, so I don't have any answers. He probably hid a lot of stuff from me." His father tearfully described him as a good kid, expressing deep distress over the situation. He said, "I don't know if it was financial. I don't know if it was mental. I don't know if it was work-related. I don't know." He even described his son as a fun-loving guy, and emphasized his son had never been in trouble with the law. His father's statement was somewhat misleading, as his son had encountered legal issues in the past, although both cases were dismissed for reasons that remain unclear. The community was deeply shaken by the news of the killings. Neighbors expressed surprise, saying they never expected such actions from Chad. He had presented himself as a great and caring father on social media and in conversations with neighbors, and they said they were not looking for any other suspects. They focused their investigations solely on Chad Doerman, aiming to uncover the motives and details surrounding the tragic incident involving his children. During interrogation, Chad initially pleaded guilty and confessed to everything he had done. However, during the first court hearing on June 23, 2023, he maintained his innocence and entered a plea of not guilty to the charges against him. Later, during his court hearing on Friday, June 23rd, Chad looked very upset. He wore a green bulletproof vest and cried while prosecutors talked about the terrible events that happened on June 15th.
Judge, the case is still new. We're still discovering facts. But the evil horror of what we know is impossible to process. In an act of just incomprehensible cruelty, the father that stands before you lined up his 3 young boys, and he executed them in his own home with a rifle. They were ages 3, 4, and 7, Judge.
During the hearing, David Gast, the chief prosecutor of municipal court in Claremont County, shared disturbing details about the case. He stated that Chad had carefully planned the events. He revealed that one of Chad's sons had tried to run away from him in a nearby field, but Chad had chased and caught the boy and brought him back to the yard, where he was killed along with his brothers. Gast even said, "The trauma that this man has inflicted on his family, community, law enforcement, first responders, and all of the rest of us is unspeakable. There has been a full admission in this case. The case is still new. We're still discovering facts, but the evil horror of what we know is impossible to process." He called Chad's killings of his sons one of the most monstrous, craven, cowardly acts that will ever be our misfortune of seeing. A bill of particulars that was filed in Claremont County provided all the information to the judge. All the incidents that happened were read aloud by the prosecutor. According to the prosecutor, Chad lined up the boys and shot them, and even Chad told the investigators that he had planned the killings. The prosecutors said when their mother tried to stop him, she was also shot in the hand. The prosecutors said that the father, Chad, shot 9 times, causing immense harm. One boy was hit once, while the other 2 were each shot 4 times. The prosecutor, Mark Teclouve, told the judge how cruelly Chad killed his 3 sons. He said the brutal act left the family and community in a state of shock. Not only this, the prosecutor also said that Chad even confessed to the murder and said, "I did it. Take me to jail. I shouldn't have done that. I shouldn't have shot them." Prosecutor Mark Teclouve also told the judge that Chad pleaded guilty during the interrogation, so he wanted the death penalty for him.
The prosecutor in this case, Mark Teclouve, has made it clear he will not settle for anything less than having Chad Doerman executed.
After the court hearing, Teclouve said to one of the news channels, "This is by far the most sickening, horrifying crime I have seen. I can only imagine the terror that these little boys felt and experienced as their father, their protector, was murdering them. We will do our utmost within my office to see this defendant never see the light of day again."
First and foremost, I want to start out by expressing the deepest sympathy I have for this family, for this unspeakable tragedy. I can't go into a whole lot of facts, all right, because this is a death penalty case, and my goal is to have this man executed for slaughtering these 3 little boys.
Teclouve said that his goal is to have this man executed for slaughtering these 3 young boys. It was an incomprehensible act of horror that he perpetuated on the family. Initially, Chad faced a total of 21 charges related to the tragic events that unfolded on June 15, 2023. Specifically, he was accused of shooting and killing 3 young children, including 4-year-old Hunter, 7-year-old Clayton, and 3-year-old Chase, in an execution-style manner.
What's more, now a grand jury has indicted Doerman on 21 counts, including 9 counts of aggravated murder, 8 counts of kidnapping, and 4 counts of felonious assault. Now, he could potentially face the death penalty if he's convicted on these charges.
Initially, charges against him included 9 counts of aggravated murder, 8 counts of kidnapping, and 4 counts of felonious assault. These serious charges reflect the severity of the allegations against Chad Doerman in connection with the tragic deaths of his children. The Claremont County Municipal Court Judge, Jason Nagel, decided that Chad should be kept in the Claremont County Jail and set his bail at $20 million.
At this point in time, bond's going to be set in the amount of $20 million cash or surety. Anything else at this time, Mr. Gast?
No, Judge.
Mr. Count. So, Cal, anything further? Nothing at this time.
Chad Doerman's bond, which was set at $20 million, was reportedly the highest bond ever set in the county's history. During another court hearing, Chad Doerman's lawyer requested the court to take the death penalty off the table because he said Chad was suffering from a serious mental illness when he shot and killed his 3 sons on June 15, 2023.
Guilty by reason of insanity, Chad Doerman has entered a new plea now more than 9 months after Claremont County prosecutors say he executed his 3 young sons. Experts will also be taking another look now at Doerman's mental state at the time of the killing.
Chad's lawyer even said, executing the seriously mentally ill is cruel and unusual punishment in violation of both the Ohio and United States constitutions. Persons suffering from serious mental illness at the time of the alleged commission of the offense are not morally culpable to the same extent as others.
Doerman has entered a plea of not guilty by reason of insanity. The prosecution, though, has requested a mental evaluation.
Later, a court date was set for May 3, 2024 to discuss the lawyer's request. Chad's lawyers had agreed to provide a report from a mental health expert by June 3, 2024 to support their claim that he was mentally ill when the crime occurred. During another court hearing in March 2024, Chad's lawyers argued in court that the Claremont County Sheriff's deputies did not respect his Miranda rights after he was arrested.
A judge has ruled that Chad Doerman's confession that he allegedly gave during his interrogation will be thrown out. On Friday, the judge ruled that the defendant's rights were violated twice when police skipped parts of the Miranda warnings and when detectives continued questioning Chad Doerman after he asked for an attorney.
The prosecution presented several witnesses, including police officers who responded to the scene. They were asked to describe their encounters with Chad. The prosecutors said that nearly all of Chad's interactions with the sheriff's deputies and detectives were recorded. The first witness to testify in court was Claremont County Deputy Chad Hoffman, who was a canine handler. Deputy Hoffman said he was the first officer to arrive at the scene. When he approached Chad's home, the first thing he saw was the defendant sitting on the porch near a rifle. As they drove to the sheriff's office, Chad shouted some things that the deputy couldn't make out. However, at one point, the deputy said he heard Chad clearly say, "Take me to jail." Detective Michael Ross from the Claremont County Sheriff's Office was also questioned in the court. He said Chad knew what was being read to him because he said, "Yep," before the detective finished reading the rights. He said during the questioning in the interrogation room, Chad repeatedly denied killing his sons. However, he later said something that Detective Ross said he considered very important. Chad mentioned the Bible during his testimony. Detective Ross remembered Chad saying something important. He said, "The Bible says you kill your firstborn, your secondborn, and your thirdborn, but first you kill your wife. I didn't kill my wife."
Suspect who's in custody clearly asked for a lawyer.
If they clearly ask for a lawyer,
Yeah.
which I've done on other cases, on other homicide cases, they clearly ask for a lawyer, I stop questioning them,
Right.
which I've done before.
You stop
In this
questioning.
case, he did not clearly say he wanted a lawyer.
But you said that you tried to clarify it with him. That's what you're saying?
According to court documents, Chad asked for a lawyer after the questioning started, but the detective didn't listen to him.
Everybody knows, we trust, except perhaps for the detectives involved, that when a custodial interrogation is underway and the suspect clearly says, "I want a lawyer," that isn't the start of a test. That isn't the start of an officer's an invitation to a detective to quiz about name, rank, and serial number of a lawyer. That's the time they stop.
Also, the motion to suppress states that Detective Ross left Chad alone for a while and then returned and continued questioning him as if Chad hadn't asked for a lawyer. The defense lawyer later asked Detective Ross if he had read Chad his Miranda rights in full. Ross replied that he hadn't, but he believed he had covered the most important parts.
All right. Now, you discussed briefly the Miranda rights. You did not read all the Miranda rights on State's Exhibit 3, did you? On your card.
Word for word, no.
Well, you left out some pretty important parts, didn't you?
So after a long court hearing, the judge decided that the investigators did not follow the rules when they arrested Chad in June 2023. Judge Richard Ferenc stated that Chad's Miranda rights were not respected. Chad's lawyers also claimed that he asked for a lawyer at least twice during his 3-hour interrogation session, but the detectives ignored his request and kept asking him questions. The lawyer also said that Chad pleaded guilty earlier because he was under the pressure of investigators. Later, the judge decided that the detectives did not fully explain Chad's rights before interrogating him, so any statements he made during that time would not be used in the next court proceedings. This decision affected how Chad's trial would proceed, as it restricted the evidence that could be presented against him. This legal twist added complexity to the trial, prolonging the legal process and intensifying public interest in the outcome of the case.
Doerman could face the death penalty if he is convicted, and his case is scheduled to go to trial in July. But now with this recent ruling, that could change. This is big, big news and could really be key to this case.
A final court hearing for Chad is set for June 14th, just before the first anniversary of the tragic events. His trial is expected to start on July 8th, 2024.
Essentially, we're looking at July 8th through August 2nd.
So what was the motive behind his killings? The authorities have not yet determined the motive behind his actions. The reason Chad shot Clayton, Hunter, and Chase is unclear, but some people speculate that he did it to hurt his 34-year-old wife because he believed she was cheating on him, but this hasn't been confirmed.
A memorial ride for the Doerman boys. Earlier today, hundreds of people came out to this fundraiser where all the money goes to their family. So while the boys' father is waiting to go on trial for their murders, the community feels this fundraiser is the very least that they can do.
A 15-mile ride through New Richmond.
As you can look around, we're close to 1,000 people.
Alan Easterday organized a memorial motorcycle, jeep, and car ride, which attracted over 100 participants to raise funds for the family. Another memorial service was held on June 26 to honor the three boys. Community members gathered at First Baptist Church of Glen Estee, dressed in bright colors as requested by the family.
And 24 hours later, the community still struggling to make sense of the shootings and the 3 innocent lives that were taken. Support for family, friends, classmates, first responders is pouring into Monroe Township with no signs of stopping. WLWT News 5's Shatera McGee is live in Monroe Township, where
Since the tragic event, many people have come together to remember the 3 young boys who were lost. One of these services was a special candlelight vigil at the elementary school where the oldest boy used to go to school. The co-funding organizer, Rachel Brown, started a fundraising campaign on GoFundMe to help pay for the 3 deceased children's funerals. So far, people have donated almost $180,000, which is much more than the initial goal. Rachel Brown mentioned in a post that the children's mother was like a sister to her. She wrote, "My sister lost her 3 amazing babies yesterday. Nothing will make this better. It will never be okay. But please, if you can find it in your heart to help relieve the financial burden of this tragedy, please donate. No one should ever have to go through this." You must be wondering where Chad Doerman is now. He is held in custody in Claremont County Jail, and his case is still ongoing, with many questions still on everyone's mind. Why did he do that? How can someone kill their own children so brutally? The answer to these questions remains a mystery. But the community is hopeful that justice will be served and the truth will be revealed. The community is still trying to come to terms with the loss of these 3 young boys. Everyone wants to find a way to heal and move forward. As the legal process continues, people are united in their desire for justice. The tragic events have also led to discussions about family relationships, mental health, and how communities can support each other. People are coming together to help the surviving family members and make sure something like this never happens again. In a world where innocence should be cherished, the unthinkable occurred. The 8-year-old Sandra Cantu's life was cut short on March 27, 2009. The culprit behind this tragic incident was Melissa Huckabee, a 28-year-old Sunday school teacher who shocked the nation with her involvement in Sandra's killing. From incriminating notes to disturbing evidence found in Melissa's possession, each revelation painted a harrowing picture of deceit and betrayal. In the small town of Tracy, California, a shocking event unfolded on March 27, 2009, when 8-year-old Sandra Cantu vanished without a trace. The community was gripped by fear and uncertainty as the search for the missing girl intensified. When the horrific truth emerged, the town was shaken to its core. Sandra had been drugged, violated, and ultimately murdered by Melissa Huckabee, a fate that no innocent child should ever endure. Adding to the chilling nature of the crime, Sandra's lifeless body was discovered concealed within a black suitcase, a grim and haunting detail that further intensified the shock and horror felt by the community. The news of her tragic fate left everyone in a state of disbelief as they struggled to come to terms with the loss of an innocent life. As the investigation unfolded, a web of deceit and secrets began to surface, exposing a shocking reality that would leave everyone stunned. Sandra Cantu was born on the 8th of March, 2001, in Tracy, San Joaquin County. Later, she was moved to Orchard Estates Mobile Home Park in Tracy, California, alongside her mother, grandparents, and 3 older siblings. She lived with her mother, Maria Chavez, and 3 older siblings, Miranda, Simone, and Thomas. Even though Sandra's parents, Maria and Daniel, had been apart for a long time, the kids maintained frequent phone conversations with their father and maintained a positive relationship with him. Sandra loved to play with her friends in the neighborhood and made new friends easily. She had a lot of energy and was always eager to start conversation with anyone, including adults. Her beautiful smile and positive attitude made her a favorite among her peers and the adults who knew her. But little did she know that fate had something else planned for her. Sandra was a 2nd grade student at Melville S. Jacobson Elementary School. On March 27, 2009, around 2 p.m., 8-year-old Sandra returned home from school and was eager to share her day with her family. Later, she went to play with her friends outside. All the kids in the neighborhood were usually outside playing. Maria, Sandra's mother, usually let her play outside, calling her back for dinner each day. Sandra changed into her favorite Hello Kitty top and black leggings, hugged her mother, and ran out to join her friends. As dinner time approached at 7 p.m., Sandra still hadn't returned home. This was when Maria started to feel anxious. She decided to call some of Sandra's friends to see if she was with them. Maria got increasingly worried, sat in her car, and started driving around the neighborhood, asking everyone she saw if they'd caught a glimpse of Sandra recently. To her shock, no one had seen the little girl for hours. So at 7:53 p.m., Maria made an urgent call to 911 for help.
Well, I have a missing daughter. Okay, how old is she? She's 8. When's the last time you saw her? Oh, about 3. She told me she was going over to this one girl to play, and she hasn't been home. And I went looking all over.
When Maria reported her daughter missing, the Tracy Police Department quickly arrived at the mobile home park. They started searching the neighborhood, asking Maria about what Sandra was wearing when she was last seen. Maria mentioned that Sandra had on a pink Hello Kitty shirt, black leggings, and Hannah Montana flip-flops. The police officers went from house to house, talking to neighbors to see if anyone had seen Sandra or noticed anything strange in the area. They even showed Sandra's picture to everyone. The officers were thorough in their efforts, making sure to cover all bases and gather as much information as possible from the community. Their dedication to finding Sandra and uncovering any potential leads was evident in their systematic approach to questioning neighbors and sharing Sandra's images in the hope of bringing her home safely. But unfortunately, the police did not find any trace on March 27th. So the next day, on March 28th, the police sought assistance from the FBI, initiating a search effort that involved cadaver dogs, helicopters, and a large number of volunteers dedicated to finding the missing 8-year-old. Detectives then also showed the photos of Sandra to everyone around, hoping for any leads. But unfortunately, no one had any information about her whereabouts. The search for the missing girl was a harrowing time for the Tracy community. Dozens of local volunteers joined forces with 230 professional search and rescue personnel from 16 different agencies to scour the town for any signs of her. The U.S. Coast Guard went a step further, mobilizing a C-13 military plane equipped with cutting-edge cameras to assist in the aerial search over Tracy. Soon, Sandra's disappearance was all over the news channels. Initially, authorities set a $2,000 reward for anyone who could provide information that might aid in locating Sandra or uncover clues about her disappearance. The amount swiftly increased to $30,000 as Sandra's case captured significant media coverage.
A missing 8-year-old Tracy girl, it continues this morning.
Investigators say Sandra Cantu walked away from her home at the Orchard Estates Mobile Home Park in Tracy. KCRA3 Sherikina Shams live in Tracy where the search continues right now.
Well, good morning. Behind me is the Orchard Estates Mobile Home Park. You can see Tracy police are stationed out here, and we've watched this morning as they've stopped and questioned people driving out of the mobile home park to get their day started today. Now, this is part of the police investigation unfolding in front of us. There's also what the volunteers are doing, and there's been an emotional search for the little girl.
And I wish we didn't have to be here. And I wish she was at home with her family. And I hope if somebody has her, they bring her home. She needs to be home with her family and her friends and all these people that care, because we all care. That's why we're all here.
And that's the voice of just one of some estimated 300 volunteers looking for the girl over the weekend. 8-year-old Sandra Cantu is Hispanic, 4 feet tall, and weighs 45 pounds with brown hair and brown eyes. So far, what we know from that surveillance tape is that it shows little Sandra Cantu leaving the mobile home park about 4 p.m. and then returning and then walking away again. So the question, where did she walk to that last time that she was being seen on that tape? And where is she today is what everybody would like to know. The investigation out here continues. Police say if you know anything, you're urged to contact Tracy.
Everyone searched for her, but still no traces were found. Later, detectives checked the surveillance camera that was installed by Sandra's grandfather for security. The recordings showed Sandra leaving the house and heading towards the park to play. Upon her return, she seemed content, skipping back towards home at 4 p.m. However, instead of going inside, she made a surprise turn, walking down the street leading to one of the exits. The footage suddenly ended at this point, leaving a mystery surrounding her next steps. This unexpected behavior raised concerns, as Sandra typically followed safety rules about leaving with family. The police suspected that someone or something familiar to her might have drawn her attention. The initial suspect for the investigators was Sandra's father, Daniel, since the police investigation revealed that he had not seen her in a long time. They also learned that he and Maria were involved in a financial dispute related to custody issues. But Maria told the detectives strongly that even though she and Daniel had problems as a married couple before, Daniel would never have anything to do with Sandra going missing. Maria said that Sandra loved her father very much, and that they got along well together. Soon the media took Daniel's interview about her missing child.
Tell us a little bit about what we were reporting today. Kyle, saying that you had gone to Mexico. Speak to that.
What would you like me to say about it?
Obviously, you're not in Mexico.
I'm right here in front of you. All I know is I received a call from my sister stating that my daughter was missing Friday, and this was on a Saturday. I rushed out here. I stood for a day, and I needed to get back for my job.
And I think that the reason why it's important for us to do this interview is because if the attention is taken off of you, then the attention can be put on the real person, if there is a person that abducted Sandra, or the search, instead of these things that are kind of thwarting people.
It's like I told the detective, do everything you need to do your job to the best of your ability. So, do your job, do the best thing you can do. I thank you for all your prayers. I love you. If you can get to a phone, dial 911, babe. Call somebody, run, do anything you can do. But please try and get home.
Sandra's father said to the interviewer that he had no clue about his daughter. He was swiftly eliminated as a suspect following a thorough investigation.
In a week since 8-year-old Sandra Cantu left home to play in California and never returned, authorities in Tracy are tracking down hundreds of leads this morning and raising the reward for information on the girl.
Investigators are sifting through trash in the local landfill, searching nearby rivers.
Later, the police were informed about some more questionable individuals who were either residents of the mobile park or seen in the area on March 27th. One such person was an unfamiliar ice cream vendor who interacted with children in the neighborhood on that day. Despite initial suspicions, he was soon cleared of any involvement in the case. Another individual who drew suspicion was a man named Frank Waller, who lived near the Cantu family, rumored by locals to be a pedophile. This man was acquainted with Sandra and had allegedly been seen kissing her on the lips 2 years prior to her disappearance.
They've also spoken with this man, Frank Waller, a neighbor who admits he kissed the second grader on the lips 2 years ago.
Impulse, just being friendly. I do some of my students also.
FBI agents and Tracy police have searched nearby homes.
The police asked about Frank's presence at the station for questioning. During the interrogation, he confessed to being attracted to girls around 9 to 10 years old, claiming it was harmless. Despite the disturbing nature of his admission, the authorities eventually eliminated him as a suspect, though they stated they would maintain surveillance on him. The search for the perpetrator continued. As the community held a vigil, Maria found comfort surrounded by family, investigators, and neighbors who gathered around her home to support her during this difficult time. Suddenly, something surprising happened. At 8:30 p.m., a neighbor, Melissa, rushed over to investigators in a state of shock. Living just a few miles away from Sandra's family, she had discovered a handwritten note near a mailbox. The note was so disturbing that she couldn't even catch her breath before sharing it with the officers. It contained a troubling message. Cantu locked in stolen suitcase thrown in water on Bachetti Road and Whitehall Road. Witness. The message was scary, but what really stood out was how strange the note looked. It had obvious spelling mistakes, like someone was trying to hide who wrote it. So many questions were going through everyone's minds. Was it even real, or was it made to confuse the investigation? The discovery of the note left everyone with more questions than answers. Before moving further, the investigators needed Melissa to come in and give her statement. The FBI conducted an interview with Melissa, considering her roles as a neighbor and a Sunday school teacher at her grandfather's church, where she served as the local pastor. Melissa told the officers that she had faced difficulties in her personal life, going through a divorce a few years back and a recent breakup. Currently, she lives with her grandparents and her 5-year-old daughter. Sandra and her sisters often visited Melissa's trailer to play with her daughter, fostering a strong bond between the two families. As Melissa sat down with the FBI agents, recounting the events, she admitted that in the moment she found the note, she didn't pay much attention to her surroundings to see if anyone else was there, nor did she notice anything else out of the ordinary that might have raised suspicions. The detectives asked Melissa if they could search her car, and she said yes. They started searching the car and they found something in the glove box, a post-it note with some words written on it, but they noticed that the words were scribbled over, like someone tried to hide what was written. The police then sent the note to experts for further evaluation. Following this discovery, they chose to release Melissa and shift their attention back to analyzing the original note found near the mailbox. Weeks went by, but authorities could not find any traces of Sandra. After 10 long days of searching for Sandra, her case took a shocking turn.
Tonight, the police chief tells us that the person or the persons responsible for the death of 8-year-old Sandra Cantu will be brought to justice. Now, Sandra Cantu's body was found inside a black suitcase that was located at the irrigation pond by farm workers this morning off of Bachetti Road. Now, police then took that luggage from the pond and transported the bag to the county morgue, where this evening police identified the body of Sandra Cantu. Now, right now, police cannot tell us the exact cause of death, but investigators tell us Sandra was identified by the clothing she was wearing. Now, investigators say the area where Sandra's body was found, search crews did in fact comb through that area. Now, we're told the irrigation pond was filled 2 weeks ago, and authorities believe the luggage floated to the surface. Sandra's body was only 2 miles away from her home. News of Sandra's death has devastated a number of people in the community.
But they have to pay for this. They have to pay it in the worst way.
Did you know Sandra or the family in any way?
No, but it feels like you do, because, you know, just like you kind of feel everybody else's pain.
On April 6th, farm worker Jose Luis Franco came across the black suitcase while he was draining an irrigation pond. The suitcase was locked and had an additional cord securing it, as if someone wanted to keep it closed for a longer period. When they pulled it from the mud, the weight of the suitcase filled everyone with a sense of dread, as they feared their worst fears were about to be realized. The grim discovery inside the suitcase left everyone reeling in shock and horror. Inside the suitcase, Sandra's lifeless body was curled up in a fetal position, still dressed in her black leggings and beloved Hello Kitty shirt. Sadly, Sandra's body had many cuts and wounds. A torn piece of cloth was tied around her head, covered in blood, and made into a noose. The scene was a chilling reminder of the brutality she had endured, sending waves of shock and sorrow through all who were touched by this tragic loss. Later, the farmer who found the suitcase was interviewed.
It was a discovery that confirmed one family's worst fears, and strangely enough, will wind up helping his. On April 6th, Jose Luis Franco saw a suitcase floating in a dairy pond, and his reaction was almost automatic.
I called the police immediately because I was very aware of the missing girl. I see it every day on the news. and I have kids of my own, so it's on my mind. So when I came across and saw the suitcase, it looked very suspicious.
Police took over after Franco's tip, and the search for Sandra was suddenly over. For alerting authorities, this father of 4 and husband is getting a hefty reward, $20,000.
Well, what am I going to do with the money? Well, hopefully we could save it for our children's education.
Franco says he wasn't even aware of a reward when he made the...
Soon, Sandra's body was sent for autopsy for further investigation. The autopsy results only added to the horror and shock surrounding Sandra's death. The autopsy uncovered grim details. Sandra had been severely assaulted. Although there were no signs of biological fluids, the injuries indicated the use of an unknown object. Her cause of death was asphyxiation. Additionally, the coroner found a high dose of alprazolam in her system, suggesting she had been drugged. The official cause of death was documented as homicidal asphyxiation. Tragically, it was determined that she had been murdered just mere hours after she was last captured on surveillance footage, a chilling realization that sent shockwaves through the community.
The search for a little girl missing in California is now a hunt for a killer. The body of 8-year-old Sandra Cantu was found hidden not far from her hometown. CBS News correspondent John Blackstone has more.
Hundreds gathered to grieve and pray near Sandra Cantu's home last night, lighting candles and creating memorials in honor of the murdered little girl. Ever since she disappeared, volunteers in Tracy had been determined to find her. Now, the city's police chief is determined to find her killer.
We will be determining the person or persons responsible for this reprehensible act, and we will bring them to justice.
After finding her lifeless body, the investigation was then focused on finding the monster responsible for such a heinous crime. With the disturbing details of the sexual assault, police quickly pieced together a profile of their potential suspect. They believed their perpetrator to be a white male, aged between 25 and 40, with a history of sexual assault or possessing child abuse material. This individual was likely acquainted with Sandra, possibly a trusted neighbor residing in the park. The investigation revealed that Sandra's killer was not a random abductor, but someone she knew. All the registered sex offenders in the area were thoroughly checked, and their alibis were verified, ruling them out as suspects. The investigation took a shocking turn when the neighbors near the irrigation pond were questioned. One resident who lived close to the ditch shared a disturbing observation. Despite not recognizing its importance initially, he mentioned seeing a dark purple two-toned SUV in the area on the day Sandra disappeared. The car's unusual color and unfamiliarity among the neighbors raised suspicions, as it was parked in an unusual spot near the swampy area. Most people avoided that area, making its presence even more peculiar. Intrigued and concerned, the neighbor decided to investigate and approach the car to identify the driver. However, to his surprise, the car was empty. Later, he got even more confused when a woman suddenly came out of the trees. She said she had stopped because she needed to use the bathroom. Without saying much else, she hurried back to the car and drove away fast. The neighbor was left feeling very puzzled by this strange thing happening in that quiet, lonely place. The neighbor's description matched a woman named Melissa Huckabee. Soon, investigators checked the CCTV camera of Sandra's house. The camera footage confirmed Melissa drove the same type of car. The surveillance cameras showed Melissa getting into her SUV from a parking spot right across the street from Melissa's house around 3:30 p.m. She drove towards her own house, which was to the left of where Sandra lived. Melissa then went to her grandparents' church before being seen by the resident near the pond around 5:30 p.m. This timeline was shocking, as it placed Melissa in the area around the time Sandra went missing. The police now had a prime suspect in the case. Law enforcement strongly suspected Melissa Huckabee as the perpetrator and sought to re-interview her. However, when they approached Melissa, they learned that she had attempted suicide by ingesting razor blades. Melissa was hospitalized, preventing the police from questioning her until she was discharged. However, she insisted she was completely unaware of what had transpired and stated that her only action was bringing the note to their attention. Melissa told the officers that at 4 p.m. when Sandra was last seen, she had been at her church, decorating her classroom, and had not witnessed anything out of the ordinary in the area. Unsurprisingly, the police asked Melissa to verify her alibi. Her phone records proved to be crucial evidence. It was revealed that Melissa had made her own call to the police earlier to report the theft of her suitcase from her driveway. She claimed that after hearing about Sandra's disappearance, she had even sent a text message to Maria. "Tell the police I had something stolen today around 4 p.m. I don't know if that makes a difference or not." The stolen suitcase played a crucial role in the investigation, as the black Eddie Bauer suitcase that contained Sandra matched the one Melissa had reported missing. Adding to the significance, the note Melissa found didn't just mention a suitcase, but specifically referred to a stolen suitcase. Despite the substantial evidence they had gathered implicating Melissa, the authorities sought additional information. They opted to wiretap her phone and patiently waited for her release from the hospital. After 2 days, when Melissa was released from the hospital, the police were stunned to learn that she had called the Cantu family. In the conversation, Melissa invited one of Sandra's siblings to her home to play with her 5-year-old daughter. Immediately responding to her residence, the officers discovered that there were no children inside, suggesting that Melissa may have been plotting to entice another young victim into her house. In a shocking turn of events, another neighbor came forward with a disturbing story. They informed the officers that just before Sandra went missing, Melissa had taken a neighborhood child to the park without permission from their parents. Upon the 7-year-old girl's return, she exhibited signs of confusion, slurred speech, and difficulty walking. The girl's parents took her to the hospital. Tests at the hospital showed that she had been drugged with benzodiazepines, the same drug found in Sandra's body. Melissa said she did not give the girl drugs, and the police did not charge her with anything. As the investigation unfolded, the police's suspicion of Melissa grew stronger. The police were astonished upon discovering the drugged child. Subsequently, they were granted a warrant to search both Melissa's trailer and her grandparents' church. During the search of the trailer, they came across a notebook. The handwriting inside the notebook was an exact match to the note Melissa had claimed she discovered on the ground. The police were stunned to uncover this crucial piece of evidence connecting Melissa to the note. Later on, the experts analyzing the post-it note found in Melissa's car's glove box made a shocking discovery. The note contained the cryptic words, Bachetti Road, Whitehall Road, and water, adding a mysterious layer to the investigation. They also found alprazolam in Melissa's purse, a drug prescribed to her, which matched what was in Sandra's body. During the search of Clover Road Baptist Church on April 6, 2009, investigators also uncovered a rolling pin stained with blood that was later determined to contain genetic material matching Sandra's DNA profile. To their horror, the investigators also found that one of the window blinds in the church was lacking a drawcord. Subsequently, the cord utilized to secure the Eddie Bauer suitcase was identified as matching the cord found on the remaining church blinds. This alarming discovery intensified suspicions against Melissa in the terrible crime, shocking both the authorities and the community with disbelief and horror. So, on April 10, 2009, Melissa Huckabee was taken into custody 5 hours after she willingly drove to the police department for questioning.
Nothing we have done and nothing we can say will ever return Sandra to her family and to the community. But last night, we arrested Melissa Huckabee, a 28-year-old Sunday school teacher who lives at the Orchard Estates Mobile Home Park. And she has been booked into San Joaquin County Jail on suspicion of kidnapping and murder of Sandra Cantu. Information developed over the course of the last few days and during an interview that Melissa drove herself to the police department to participate in led us to develop probable cause to take her into custody at approximately 11:15 last evening. There's still a lot of work left to be done over the next several weeks to ensure that Ms. Huckabee pays for what she has done. There are no other suspects in this case. We do not anticipate any other arrests in this case. I couldn't begin to even theorize what her motive is. I'd like to thank the city of Tracy, the community, and everyone assembled here for the support and the assistance that you've provided us over the last 15 days. Our community will start to heal at some point. Today is going to be a very difficult day for everyone to be able to...
Placed under suicide watch at the San Joaquin County Jail.
The California woman accused of killing 8-year-old Sandra Cantu appeared in court for the first time yesterday. She faces multiple charges, including sexual assault. Melissa Huckabee is under suicide watch this morning. CBS News correspondent John Blackstone reports.
CBS News has learned that days before her arrest, Melissa Huckabee was hospitalized after swallowing 3 X-Acto knife blades. In custody, she's been on suicide watch.
After several hours, investigators confront Melissa in the interrogation room with all the evidence they found.
At 5:30 and 5:40, 2 people saw your car stopped on Whitehall Road. They saw you come from out of the bushes on Whitehall Road, and someone asked you what?
When I was okay, and I said I was going to the bathroom.
Mm-hmm. What were you doing, Melissa?
It was an accident.
I told you it was an accident. I know it was. Accidents happen.
Kill her.
During interrogation, Melissa Huckabee denied everything, but later she claimed that Sandra's death was an accident.
It was an accident.
I told you it was an accident. I know it was. Accidents happen.
Kill her. I went to church. I was scared. And when I came outside, I looked at my suitcase. I went to take it out and it was heavy. And she was in there. She wasn't breathing or anything.
What did she look like?
She looked pale. And I killed her.
Huh?
I thought that she was dead. And I panicked.
So what happened?
I tried to wake her up and she wouldn't wake up. But I didn't know what else to do.
She eventually confessed that she encouraged Sandra to get into the suitcase while playing a game with her own daughter. Melissa admitted to zipping Sandra inside the suitcase, but then forgot about her until it was too late. When Melissa finally returned to the suitcase, she found Sandra's lifeless body. Melissa claimed that she was playing a game of hide-and-seek with Sandra, suggesting that Sandra get inside the suitcase and jump out to surprise her daughter and Sandra's sister. Melissa stated that Sandra agreed to the plan. After zipping up the suitcase, Melissa said she forgot the child was inside. It wasn't until she arrived at the church that she remembered and unzipped the case, only to find Sandra appearing lifeless. She said she attempted CPR in a panic and also took a small wet towel to cool Sandra's forehead. Overwhelmed with the situation, she admitted she didn't know what to do. Later, she decided to dump the suitcase containing Sandra's body into a nearby pond. But investigators knew she was telling a big lie. When police further investigated Melissa's personal life, they came to know that she had a troubled past with criminal activities, depression, and other mental health issues. Melissa's legal troubles were well documented. Court records showed she pleaded no contest on January 9th to felony second-degree commercial burglary and misdemeanor property theft charges. A criminal complaint further detailed her history, including a 2006 property theft conviction that led to jail time in Los Angeles County. In November 2008, she was accused of attempting to steal from a store. The complaint noted she was on probation in San Joaquin County and had a court date scheduled. Additionally, Melissa had filed for bankruptcy in 2003, citing credit card debt and medical expenses. Investigators also interviewed Melissa's father, Brian Lawless. He said that his daughter faced ongoing battles with depression and encountered challenges in finding her path after completing her education. Later, the investigators interviewed Melissa's ex-husband, John Huckabee. He said she did suffer from depression. She did have issues with her self-persona, who she saw herself. Despite Melissa's ongoing struggles with depression, her husband described her as generally carefree and not prone to violent behavior. He told investigators they got married in August 2003 while Melissa was 5 months pregnant. Their marriage faced difficulties, leading to a separation in August 2004 and a divorce finalized in September 2005. As a result, Melissa was granted full custody of their daughter, who is now 5 years old. He said he was shocked when he knew how his ex-wife Melissa killed a little girl. He said, "My initial reaction was shock and complete disbelief," John Huckabee said. "It's not something you want to think anyone is capable of doing, let alone someone that you knew, and that's a mother of your child." He said when they initially separated, Melissa moved to Southern California to live with her parents, which greatly limited opportunities to see his daughter. He even said during a past custody battle, Melissa made accusations against him, claiming he was guilty of alcohol abuse and domestic violence, allegations Johnny strongly refuted. Johnny Huckabee, who had been out of touch with his ex-wife for over 3 years, was now seeking custody of their daughter. He had started a new family, remarrying and having 2 more children. Yet the idea of her being involved in murder and rape, especially of a child, seemed incomprehensible. So the trial began. At her trial on April 14th, Melissa Huckabee displayed her most emotional reaction when her criminal actions were reannounced. She closed her eyes and seemed to struggle to hold back tears. During the trial, prosecutor Thomas Testa argued that Melissa had carefully planned Sandra's death. He presented surveillance footage indicating that Sandra intended to visit Melissa's house. The prosecutor claimed that Melissa took Sandra to the church to help with decorations, where she then gave Sandra juice containing a powerful sedative. Prosecutor also said that Melissa waited for Sandra to pass out. After Sandra was unconscious, they claimed Melissa attacked her and then suffocated her to death. The prosecutor Thomas Testa initially sought the death penalty against Melissa Huckabee, as she had not yet pleaded guilty to the heinous crimes. However, a pivotal moment occurred during one of the trial proceedings when Melissa made the decision to plead guilty, taking full responsibility for her actions. During the trial, Judge Linda Lothus of San Joaquin County Superior Court questioned Melissa Huckabee, asking if she had discussed the matter with her lawyers and if she was resolute in her decision to plead guilty, giving up her right to a jury trial. Melissa answered yes. As Judge Lothus concluded her questioning of Melissa Huckabee, prosecutor Thomas Testa expressed concerns about Melissa's mental state. He pointed out that Melissa's behavior in prison, including an incident where she attempted to harm herself, was unusual and raised questions about her ability to make rational decisions. Testa even said, "She appears extremely coherent today, but I just worry down the road." Prosecutor Thomas Testa seemed concerned that Melissa Huckabee might reconsider her decision to plead guilty. Lothus then told Testa, "She appears fine to me," but he still proceeded to ask Melissa if she comprehended the situation. As the legal proceedings continued, Melissa Huckabee's decision to plead guilty was a significant moment in the case. Her admission of guilt brought some closure to the Cantu family, sparing them from a lengthy trial. This important moment changed how things were going in the court and led to what would happen next in Sandra's case. Melissa's guilty plea made things simpler and gave the Cantu family some comfort after all they had been through since Sandra's tragic death. So, on June 14, 2010, she was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole.
May soon come to order. Department 30, and intentionally, with malice aforethought, murder Sandra Cantu, a human being. There are 3 special circumstances alleged. In the first special circumstance, it is further alleged that the murder of Sandra Cantu was committed by defendant Melissa Huckabee while the said defendant was engaged in the commission of the crime of kidnapping in violation of Penal Code Sections 207 and 209. In the second alleged special circumstance, it is further alleged that the murder of Sandra Cantu was committed by Melissa Huckabee while the said defendant was engaged in the commission, attempted commission, or immediate flight after the commission or attempted commission of the crime of performance of lewd and lascivious acts upon the person of a child under the age of 14 in violation of Penal Code Section 288 within the meaning of Penal Code Section 190.2, parentheses A, parentheses 17, parentheses E. In the third special circumstance, it is further alleged that the murder of Sandra Cantu was committed by Melissa Huckabee while said defendant was engaged in the commission, attempted commission, or immediate flight after the commission or attempted commission of the crime of rape by instrument in violation of Penal Code Section 289 within the meaning of Penal Code Section 190.2A17K. It is also put on notice that the evidence presented at the preliminary hearing will also be used for any violation of probation and a request for discovery.
Melissa Huckabee faced charges for the murder of Sandra Cantu. Additional charges were filed regarding the drugging of a 7-year-old girl, but this was later dropped as part of a plea deal. To avoid the death penalty, Melissa pleaded guilty to the first-degree murder and kidnapping of Sandra Cantu.
Her crime against a Tracy girl shocked the nation, and this morning we will find out the punishment for the murder of Sandra Cantu. Good morning, I'm Deirdre Fitzpatrick.
And I am Teo Torres. There are actually 2 hearings in the Sandra Cantu murder case today.
So the first one is the sentencing for Melissa Huckabee, and then the judge will decide whether or not to lift the gag order. KCR 3's Leticia Ordaz joining us now live outside the San Joaquin County Courthouse in Stockton.
Good morning, Deirdre and Teo. I can tell you it's going to be a very busy day here at the San Joaquin County Courthouse. In just about 3 hours, Melissa Huckabee will face a judge and will formally be sentenced for the murder and kidnapping of little Sandra Cantu. And I can tell you that the community, as well as the victim's family, is very anxious for these proceedings to finally come to an end. It was last month that Melissa Huckabee pleaded guilty and will likely spend the rest of her life in prison without the possibility of parole. Huckabee's rape charge was dropped, and her guilty plea means that she escaped the death penalty.
During her sentencing, Melissa expressed her confusion about her own actions. Speaking directly to Sandra's mother, she admitted that she was unaware how to interpret her behavior. She said, "I wish that I could give you an explanation for what happened. I still cannot understand why I did what I did." After hearing sentencing, she also made this statement.
Words cannot convey the badly I feel for the pain that I have caused you. It is not enough that I say I am sorry, but that is all I can do. From the day Sandra has died, I have had to live with the consequences of what I have done. For the rest of my life, I'm going to have to live with these feelings of responsibility for her death. Not a day, not an hour.
This is what Sandra's father said after the sentencing.
We're supposed to forgive our enemies. But I don't even know what to consider her, to be honest with you. There ain't nothing that happens today gonna change. Ain't nothing gonna change life. I don't believe that in my heart, I should hate or anything like that. You took the life of an innocent little girl, and she didn't do nothing. She's not even old enough to decide to eat ice cream yet. I stand at my job, and nothing changes, and nothing's gonna change the fact whether I cry
On April 16, 2009, Sandra's friends and family gathered to lay her to rest in a small pink casket. The community's love and grief were palpable, as over 600 people attended her funeral to say their final goodbyes. The tragedy of Cantu's death deeply impacted Tracy. To honor her memory, volunteers planted a tree and built a new playground at Jacobson Elementary School. One of her cousins, Janet Anderson, also started an annual celebration on Cantu's birthday called Tracy Celebrates Children. Over the years, hundreds of local kids have participated in this event, getting fingerprinted and photographed to aid rescuers if another child goes missing. The reasons behind Sandra's tragic death are hard to understand. However, the prosecutors believe that Melissa had planned everything because she wanted to harm Sandra deliberately. Melissa Huckabee never shared why she did what she did, leaving investigators puzzled. The documents also provided insight into a woman who has struggled with depression, a difficult history, and a habit of self-harm. So where is Melissa now? Melissa is currently serving a life sentence in San Joaquin County Jail, bearing the weight of her grave actions. Her time in prison serves as a reminder that such serious crimes have serious consequences. For the Cantu family, the pain of losing Sandra will never fully heal, but they find solace in the knowledge that justice has been served. The trial and conviction provided a sense of closure, affirming that Sandra's tragic death did not go unanswered. Jonathan was born in Michigan in 1994 to Jennifer and Michael. 3 years later, his sister Jessica came into his life. From a very young age, Jonathan and Jessica formed a bond that's unbreakable. They shared a special connection. Unfortunately, Jonathan's parents, Jennifer and Michael, faced struggles. Their frequent fights meant Jonathan and Jessica were often left in the care of their grandmother, Sandra. Sandra was Jennifer's mother and took on the role of a nurturing caregiver to her grandchildren. She provided Jonathan and Jessica with a safe and loving home away from home. At their grandmother's house, Jonathan and Jessica found solace and comfort. Sandra brought joy and laughter, and the children cherished the moments they spent with her. She was married to Fred Lane. Together, Sandra and Fred created a family unit that nurtured and protected Jonathan and Jessica. In 2008, after enduring years of turmoil, Jennifer and Michael divorced. When Jonathan was a Farmington Central High School senior, he faced a challenging and unexpected turn of events. His mother made the decision to move the family from Michigan to Arizona. The move was difficult for him, as he was leaving behind the only life he had ever known. The situation only worsened for Jonathan and his family when they arrived in Arizona. Shortly after their relocation, his young sister Jessica became gravely ill. After undergoing extensive tests and examinations, doctors discovered a tumor on Jessica's brain. Jessica's diagnosis was devastating for the entire family. Jessica underwent surgery the very next day to remove the tumor. The operation was successful, but it came at a cost. She endured a lengthy recovery, requiring her to stay in the hospital for a whole month. During this time, Jennifer devoted all her time and attention to her daughter's well-being, sacrificing her own needs, which left Jonathan feeling isolated and alone. He had to cope with the pressure of being a teenager in a new state while facing the absence of his mother and sister. Recognizing the strain that Jonathan was going through, Sandra, his grandmother, reached out to Jennifer. Deeply concerned about her grandson's well-being, Sandra suggested sending him north to Michigan to live with her and her husband, Fred. She believed that being around familiar surroundings and old friends would provide Jonathan with some solace during this difficult time. Jonathan was a good kid, but he still possessed the youthful energy and unpredictability that comes with being a teenaged boy. Jennifer worried whether her 74-year-old mother Sandra would be capable of caring for him. However, Sandra reassured Jennifer that she was more than capable of taking care of him. 1 month after the Hoffman family moved to Arizona, Jonathan returned to Michigan and moved in with his grandmother Sandra and her husband Fred. This homecoming brought joy and relief to Jonathan, who was midway through his senior year at high school. He was thrilled to be back among his friends and family, feeling a sense of comfort and belonging he had missed while away. Jonathan's friends agreed that he was shy at first, but when he opened up, he was a lot of fun and loved to make people laugh. He had a zest for adventure and was always up for trying new things. When he returned to Michigan and Farmington Central High School, his friends were thrilled to have him back. Jennifer, his mother, missed her son greatly and made the trip to Michigan to visit him for 2 weeks. Despite Jonathan's apparent happiness living with his grandmother, Jennifer discovered that he had been smoking cannabis. However, Jonathan's dabbling in illegal substances did not extend to harder drugs. Although Jennifer was not happy about his cannabis use, she considered this typical teenage experimentation. It was difficult for Jennifer to return home after her trip with her son. With a heavy heart, Jennifer bid farewell to Jonathan, feeling confident that he would be in good hands. As Jennifer made her way back to Arizona, her mind filled with thoughts of her son's well-being. She reassured herself that her mother would never allow any harm to Jonathan, her grandchild. However, Jennifer could not have been more wrong. Little did Jennifer know that Jonathan was in grave danger, and it was at the hands of his grandmother Sandra. In a matter of weeks, Jonathan would be dead. On May 19, 2017, at 5:27 p.m., Jonathan Hoffman made the panicked call to 911, his voice trembling as he relayed to the dispatcher that his grandmother had shot him and he was dying. The dispatcher quickly sprang into action, dispatching police and paramedics to Jonathan's residence. As she spoke to him, she tried to reassure him that help was on the way, her voice steady amongst the chaos and fear in his voice. There was an ominous silence on the line, and for a moment, the dispatcher feared that the connection had been dropped or that Jonathan had passed away. But then, just as her heart sank, she heard a barrage of gunfire erupt from the phone, followed by a pained cry. Jonathan shouted, "Ow!" as his voice cracked with terror as he told the operator that his grandmother had shot him again. The West Bloomfield Township Police Department officers were swiftly dispatched to the scene, arriving at Sandra Lane's house at 5:33 p.m. As they approached, they could hear gunfire coming from within the residence. The officers, trained to handle such situations, didn't hesitate to take the necessary precautions. They positioned themselves behind their patrol vehicles, providing cover for themselves. From their position, the officers observed a woman walking inside the house. They issued clear commands ordering the person inside to place their weapon on the ground. Time seemed to stand still, their hearts pounding with anticipation. Finally, after a tense moment, the officers heard the sound of a gun being secured. With the assurance that the person inside had secured the firearm, they decided to enter the residence. When the police made it inside the home, they found 74-year-old Sandra Lane standing in front of them, a Glock 17 40 caliber handgun at her feet. Staring at the police, Sandra said, "I murdered my grandson," several times. Sandra was not crying. She was calm and stated the disturbing sentiment as a matter of fact. One of the police officers asked Sandra why she killed her grandson, but Sandra remained silent. 2 minutes after the police arrived at her home, Sandra was handcuffed and placed in the back of a patrol vehicle. Officers entered her home to find the victim, who Sandra said was her grandson, 17-year-old Jonathan Hoffman. Inside Sandra Lynn's home, the air was heavy with smoke, making it difficult to see through the haze. As they climbed the staircase, they reached the landing where Jonathan lay motionless, face down on the hardwood floor. Dressed in gym shorts and socks, the young man's body was riddled with gunshot wounds to his upper torso. Despite the severity of his condition, the medics managed to detect a faint pulse. With urgency, Jonathan was rushed to Botsford Hospital, where a team of medical professionals worked tirelessly to stabilize his condition. However, their efforts proved futile. and after 30 minutes of intense medical intervention, he was pronounced dead. After the ambulance rushed Jonathan Hoffman to the hospital, Sandra Lane's home was secured as a crime scene. The residence spanned 3 levels, and nearly every room was filled with signs of violence and blood. Crime scene investigators arrived and carefully examined the area, searching for clues that could shed light on the shocking events. As investigators descended the basement staircase, they were immediately struck by the presence of footprints and the bloodstains on the ground. The investigators carefully preserved this evidence. Moving further into the house, the team came across 10 bullet casings scattered in various areas. Each casing was collected. One of the investigators noticed a bullet hole in the drywall. In the search for more evidence, the investigators made their way to the 2nd floor. There they discovered a gun case filled with ammunition. While the investigators were busy collecting evidence, they took special care to photograph Sandra, her face, arms, and hands. While sitting in the back of the patrol car, Sandra became very upset and started to cry. In the middle of the chaos, Fred Lane, Sandra's husband, showed up outside of the house with their dog. According to Fred, he had been gone for an hour, having taken the dog for a walk after Sandra asked him to. Fred was stunned to learn that his wife had admitted to shooting and killing their grandson Jonathan. Once Jonathan was pronounced dead at the hospital, the police faced the challenging task of informing his family that their beloved son was murdered by his grandmother, Sandra Lane. As detectives delved deeper into the case, they learned that Jonathan had been living in Michigan while his parents and sister were residing in Arizona. When the detectives broke the devastating news to Jennifer, informing her that her mother had shot and killed her beloved son, she was left in a state of stunned disbelief. It seemed inconceivable that someone who was supposed to love and cherish their grandchildren could commit such a heinous crime. Everyone knew that Jonathan was his grandmother's favorite, which made it even more unfathomable how he ended up dead at Sandra's hands. As the day wore on, around 7:30 p.m., the police decided to take Sandra Lane to the hospital for a health evaluation, given her advanced age. As they waited in the emergency room, Sandra insisted that Jonathan had never hurt her. She described him as a good boy who never harmed anyone. After a medical assessment, the doctors cleared Sandra of any suspicious injuries. With this, the police decided to place her back into the patrol car and take her to the police department for questioning. On May 20th after midnight, Sandra's attorney met her at the police station. Before she provided her official statement to the police, Sandra sought legal advice from her attorney. When the detectives eventually met with Sandra and her attorney, Sandra's story dramatically changed. At the hospital, she had initially told police that her grandson was not involved in the incident. However, during their meeting at the police station, she claimed that Jonathan and she were engaged in an altercation which involved yelling and screaming. During this altercation, Jonathan kicked her in the stomach, causing her to fear for her life. According to Sandra, Jonathan had been exhibiting strange behavior and signs of anger lately. Jonathan had been coming and going from her house at all hours of the night, and he often brought people over whom she did not particularly care for. Furthermore, Sandra had noticed valuables missing from her home, leading her to suspect that Jonathan or his friends may have been involved in theft. Sandra also mentioned that her grandson has a history of getting into trouble with the law. Sandra claimed while Jonathan was driving, an officer pulled him over and it was discovered that there was cannabis in his car. However, that did not deter him from engaging in similar behavior. Just a short time later, Jonathan was again stopped by an officer, and this time, it was discovered that he was in possession of Adderall. In addition to the aforementioned incidents, Sandra also recounted a time when she had to call 911 due to Jonathan's aggressive behavior. During that particular incident, Jonathan was yelling obscene things at her. However, when the police arrived, Sandra implored them not to arrest Jonathan. According to Sandra, she only purchased a gun because of Jonathan's behavior. Sandra claimed that everything came to head on May 18th, after she took Jonathan to the probation department because he had not been in compliance with his probation. When they returned home, Sandra said Jonathan threatened to take her car, and that is when he attacked her. Since there were no witnesses to Jonathan's shooting other than Sandra, the detectives faced a challenge in confirming her story. Sandra claimed self-defense, making the detectives conduct an investigation into what happened. They needed to ensure they were not sending a 74-year-old frail grandma to prison for defending herself against a violent teenaged boy. The detectives reviewed the picture taken by the crime scene investigators immediately after Sandra admitted to shooting Jonathan. However, the detectives did not find any signs of violence on Sandra. Not a single scratch was present, which would be expected if she'd been in a struggle. During her court arraignment, the judge ruled that Sandra should be held with bond as she awaited trial at the Huron Correctional Facility. Paul Walton, the prosecutor assigned to the case, felt that the 911 call made by Jonathan contradicted Sandra's claim of self-defense. When Paul listened to the call, he noticed a significant period, approximately 2 minutes and 51 seconds, of silence before Sandra fired another shot at Jonathan. Based on Walton's observations, it seemed that Jonathan was already severely injured and posed no immediate threat to Sandra. However, Sandra's defense attorney presented a different argument. They contended that Jonathan was still a threat despite his injuries. The defense highlighted a portion of the 911 call where Sandra is heard yelling, "Let go," during the altercation, suggesting that Jonathan was still coming for his grandmother, even though he was injured. The defense attorneys for Sandra Lane argued that she was nothing more than an innocent and loving grandmother. They argued that the end of the 911 call, where Sandra can be heard saying to her grandson, who was bleeding out, to lie down and that she was going to get him some water, proved that point. According to the defense, these statements showed Sandra's true nature as a compassionate and caring woman. Prosecutor Walton was confused by Sandra Lane. Was she a loving grandmother who had no alternative but to take the life of her grandson in a tragic circumstance? Or was she a cold-blooded murderer who pursued her grandson, ultimately shooting him like an animal in the woods? To gain a deeper understanding of Sandra Lane, Prosecutor Walton initiated a series of interviews around town. These testimonies, all of who were interviewed, painted a consistent picture of Sandra as an ordinary grandmother. Sandra frequented the local salon weekly, actively participated in her synagogue, taught Sunday school, and volunteered her time. She was also known for her generosity and affluence. What struck the detectives most was the overwhelmingly positive feedback from those who knew Sandra. They described her as deeply bonded to her grandchildren, especially Jonathan. The testimonies seemed to contradict the horrific act she had admitted to committing. However, a different story emerged when the detectives interviewed Jennifer, Sandra's daughter, and Jonathan's mother. Jennifer provided a different take on her mother's character, contradicting the image presented by the community. Jennifer claimed that her mother was not the warm and compassionate person portrayed by others. Instead, she painted a different picture, describing her mother as a controlling and abusive person. According to Jennifer, when she grew up, her parents constantly fought, and there were times when Sandra physically assaulted her. Jennifer stated that her father was often absent, leaving her mother complete control over the household. As a result, Sandra acted like a tyrant going on tirades. Eventually, Sandra said her father went on one trip and never returned. Several years after her father's disappearance, Sandra remarried a man named Fred Lane. Jennifer noticed a significant change in her mother's behavior. Sandra expressed a deep love for Fred and believed that he was a good man who brought stability to their home. Initially, Sandra's arguing and controlling behavior seemed to subside. However, Jennifer claimed that after she gave birth to her first child, Jonathan, Sandra once again tried to impose her control. According to Jennifer, her mother, Sandra, became obsessed with her baby to such an extent that Jennifer often joked that she thought Sandra wanted to kidnap the baby and take him away from her. Jennifer believed that Sandra's obsession bordered on an unhealthy level. After Sandra was charged with murdering her grandson Jonathan, the community of West Bloomfield rallied around her. There were a significant number of residents who believed that Jonathan was a drug user who deserved to be killed. In response to this sentiment, members of the community began posting supportive messages on social media, expressing their encouragement for Sandra, referring to her as Granny and using the hashtag #GoGrannyGo. To the public, Jonathan was portrayed as a monster, while Sandra was depicted as an innocent and frail older woman. Jennifer shared that most of her family had accepted Sandra's self-defense narrative and had turned their backs on the memory of both Jonathan and herself. Sandra's husband, Fred, stood by his wife's side throughout the ordeal, offering unwavering support. The medical examiner determined Jonathan Hoffman's manner of death to be homicide. Jonathan's cause of death was the multiple gunshot wounds he sustained. Examination of the wounds revealed the presence of stippling, which indicated that the gun was fired at Jonathan from varying distances. In addition to the gunshot wounds, a toxicology report was conducted on Jonathan's body. The report revealed the presence of synthetic marijuana, also known as spice. At the time, spice, specifically K2, was prevalent among teens and young adults in West Bloomfield. This substance could be purchased at gas stations without identification, and there were several reports of individuals taking it and experiencing adverse reactions, such as violent behavior. Interestingly, 1 month before Jonathan's death, there was a murder involving another student from the same high school. Michael Cipriano, a student like Jonathan, murdered his father Robert following a verbal confrontation. It was reported that Michael was under the influence of spice at the time of the attack. Jessica, Jonathan's sister, had a deep love for her brother, but she was aware of his emotional and sometimes violent tendencies. Despite not wanting to think about it, she began to wonder if her brother had hurt their grandmother, which is why she shot and killed him. 2 months after Sandra was arrested at a circuit court arraignment, she was indicted on 2 more charges: possession of a firearm and the commission of a felony, and a unique indictment called open murder. Open murder is only in effect in select states, including Nevada and Michigan. It encompasses both first and second-degree murder charges. Prosecutor Paul Walton was concerned about the jury's potential reluctance to convict a grandmother of premeditated murder. As a result, he decided to present the jury with a broader range of options, a decision that displeased the defense. They felt that the prosecution was copping out on their job. In 2013, Sandra Lane went on trial for the murder of her grandson. News of the killing spread, garnering national attention. Many people blamed Jennifer, Jonathan's mother, for allegedly sending him with Sandra to Michigan. There were those who posted on social media criticizing Jennifer and suggesting her son deserved to die, along with Jennifer herself. During the trial, Sandra Lane's defense attorneys focused on portraying her as an innocent and loving grandmother. However, the state put forth a contradicting argument, attempting to disprove her claims of self-defense. Prosecutor Walton presented the jury with the images taken after the shooting, which depicted Sandra. He argued that these images indicated inconsistencies in her account of the altercation. One of the notable discrepancies pointed out by Prosecutor Walton was that Sandra's clothes were not ripped, her jewelry was not torn off, and her glasses were still fixed in place. Additionally, her hair remained styled. This evidence implied that there was no physical struggle between Sandra and Jonathan, as she had claimed. Additionally, there was evidence to support the theory that Sandra went down to the basement after the shooting to find additional ammunition. This evidence was shown in the bloody footprints the investigators found on the basement stairs. The crime lab determined the footprints belonged to Sandra, and the blood they were made in was Jonathan. After the prosecution rested their case, Sandra's defense had the opportunity to present their case. In order to strengthen their case, Sandra's attorney decided to allow her to testify on her behalf. Despite the risk involved, the attorney believed that it was important for the jury to hear directly from Sandra herself about the experiences she faced while living with her grandson Jonathan in the months before he was killed. According to Sandra, Jonathan was violent and had a habit of kicking in doors and breaking objects. One time, he even shattered a computer monitor. On the day of the incident that led to Jonathan's death, Sandra claimed that he hit her in the head, which left her feeling threatened and afraid. As a result, she decided to retrieve her gun, hoping it would serve as a means to protect herself. Her intention, according to her testimony, was not to kill her grandson, but rather to stop him from getting back up and attacking her again. However, during cross-examination by Prosecutor Paul Walton, Sandra's defense began to crumble. When pressed by Walton, Sandra admitted that her motive for obtaining the gun was not fear for her safety, but rather wanting Jonathan to listen to her. This admission weakened her credibility as a witness and made it more difficult to argue self-defense. Experts testified that the K2 spice detected in Jonathan's urine at the time of his death indicated he was not actively under the influence of the drug during the time of his death. The location in the urine suggested that the drug had gone through his system, dismissing Sandra's claim that Jonathan was high on the drug and violent. Following the presentation of the evidence presented at the trial, the jury deliberated for 2 days before returning with a guilty verdict for second-degree murder and use of a firearm during the commission of a felony. Sandra was sentenced to 20 years of imprisonment. Kill or be killed, Grandma's gun.